Good morning again. I can't tell you how happy I am to be here. And today I'm just going to give you my personal testimony. The Bible says in Revelation 12:11, they, the believers, overcame him, Satan, the Antichrist, by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony, and not loving their life to the death. Powerful. You and I in our faith will overcome Satan by three things: the blood of the Lamb, the word of your mouth, your testimony. So, friends, we're not to be Secret Service Christians. You got to be so bold in your personal testimony of salvation of Jesus that you lay down your life for it. So that's for free. Well, I want to say that I was raised in a Christian family. Thank God for that. And I gave my life, I totally met and experienced the love of God at 16. I knew about it. I believed it. I was tender-hearted toward the Lord. But by the time you're a teenager, you have other desires, and they're not all of God. But all this to say, I thank God He softened my heart, and I gave my heart to Jesus at 16. A genuine surrender. I've felt baptized in the love of God for me by name, personally. Then it's just all fun and glory and joy and love to serve the Lord. I graduated from high school in 1960. I worked a few years, and then I wanted to go to Bible school. I wanted to be around other Christian young people. If I'm going to marry, I want to be in an environment of believing men. So it was two good reasons to go there: to get more training and to make Christian friends that would be a lifetime. When I got to college, of course, I was single, and I want to show you a picture here. The college had a great music program, and the college would sponsor so many groups a year, and you had to try out before the faculty and the music department and be chosen. Well, everybody wanted to be chosen because the school would sponsor you for 10 weeks during the summer, pay all your expenses, all your food on the highway, all your accommodation, and they would assign you to sing and represent the college at various churches throughout the state, whichever part of the state they assigned you to. So my trio was chosen, but I was paying my own way, and at the end of the quarter I would run out of money, so I would quit, go to work full-time, and get enough money for another quarter and come back. So I was in this group that was chosen. No, I was in this group, and when I quit to go get more money to come back, well, they were choosing permanent teams to travel, and they got somebody to work with them while I was gone, and that group was chosen. And when I came back, I just cried my eyes out. And the girl said to me, "You can have your place if you want it." And I said, "No, you go." But I went in my bedroom and I cried and I said, "Jesus, someday, sometime, somewhere, will you let me sing what I feel?" And I'll tell you, God let me marry a man, and we were able to travel and sing for 50 years. God let me sing what was in my heart. So this was when I was a freshman in college. My husband here, freshman in college, he's a mite younger than me, so we weren't in the same class. And you never, you know, have relationships with underclassmen. But I was busy serving the Lord, and he was busy. He was chosen. He has a good voice, and he was chosen to travel in a men's quartet. And he was a pretty quiet fellow, and so he didn't make you notice him. And he traveled, so he had a lot of privileges that way as well. On one of my summers, that college was out, and I had gone back to work to get more money, and he'd gone back home, which was Federal Way for him. I went to live in Federal Way down the same street because I was living with his sister-in-law, and I would work at Boeing. Well, we ended up going to the same local church. I was surprised. I didn't even really notice him for the first few weeks. But one Sunday night after church, a single guy said, "Hey, Dale," that's my husband's name, said, "Dale, why don't you ask her to go with all of us out to the airport to get something to eat after church?" So he did. And that started a relationship. Next day, we played tennis together, and we just kept visiting and seeing each other. So it wasn't long, and we were married. We felt God's confirmation in it. The church felt God's confirmation in it. And if you've found the right man in God, don't listen to the world. They say, don't get married till you're 30. God says, instruct the young women to marry. That way you don't get yourself in trouble. You don't dissipate your affections. So we were married, but because my husband, he had had a relationship with a girl there, and it was serious on one part, but he knew he wasn't that serious, so he felt he had to break it up, and he felt embarrassed having done that. So he left college for that reason and had gone home to go to work. Well, that was in the early 1960s, and he got drafted, boom, in the Vietnam draft right away. But we got married on one of his leaves home. He finished the military, I should say. Or was he? See, I'm 82, so I'm starting to get fuzzy on some of this. No, he was still in the military, but he had done very well in the military. He's a high achiever. He's highly competitive, and nobody's going to be above him. So he got a lot of benefits for that. And one of the benefits was, because he was married, he could bring his wife over and move off base, and he wouldn't have to go to any KP. He would just be treated like an 8 to 5 office guy. Well, he liked that. So he brought me over, and here's a picture of us together. And we were able then to live off base in Okinawa, and him go ahead and finish his military in the office. Well, while we were there, we went look for a church to go to, and we found the church. It was a full gospel church, and here is a picture of it. And the missionaries had gone there 30 years before and had a good, strong work. Well, when I came over, I went to work at a local Christian school teaching basic English for for the Japanese, Chinese, Okinawans, those that wanted to learn English as a second language. And so we started bringing these, I started bringing the kids in my class to church. Well, so many of them started coming. We taught them about Jesus. So many of them started coming that the church built a teen chapel for them. And here's a picture of it. Right here, it says Neighborhood Teen Center. Isn't that nice? We had up to 110 kids. And Dale was in the military, but because he had weekends off, he joined in that work, and he became their pastor on Sunday. And through the week, they'd come to our home. We'd have parties together. We'd pray together, all sorts of things. And then in the summer, we took them to the empty schoolhouses of the Okinawan people, and we would rent them, and we'd have a youth camp. These kids had never heard of such a thing. So they got sleeping bags, and we got cots, military cots, and we got an old stove and some pots and pans, and we went out to the village and we had youth camp. And then back during the academic year, I worked at the school which taught English as a second language. Here's a picture of me just instructing one of the children. Here's a picture of one of my classes. So they learned English as a second language, but we taught Bible. It was a Christian school. And many of those children gave their hearts to Jesus. Many of them went into the Lord's work. And then here's a picture of the whole group of teens. It built to 110, I think. And here's a picture of all the kids out in front of the teen church on a Sunday, and we took their picture. We had great times. The church got us a big bus. We'd take these kids on trips out to the ocean and youth camp and stuff. God really blessed us. Rich, rich years of our life there. This is kind of dark, I'm sorry, but it's a picture of the girls singing group, and we made our own uniforms. I invited them over to our homes. We got patterns, we fitted each other, we cut them all out and sewed the uniforms together. And so the kids were our life. And here's a picture of one of our evening services at camp. We had free, open worship. I played the piano, only in 2 keys, but I loved it. And I played the piano and they sang. And then after church, we'd have an altar service. And these kids would come down to the altar, give their life to Jesus. God would move on their little hearts. They'd weep and raise their hands and worship Jesus. And some of those children were called into full-time ministry. Well, we were also exposed to the culture there. We lived up the street from a very nice hotel, dining place. The Ryukyu Hotel. And they had the big stage dance of the native costumes and dancers. And my husband would take me there once in a while for a dining. And we got 2 filet mignon dinners served in this exotic dining room. They would wheel our food out on a cart and serve us our soup 1 course at a time for $5 each. When my husband's military was done, and when we felt that our work there was done, we felt that God wanted us to return back to the States and go on with our life before the military came along. So here's some of my girls from my classes, the Okinawan, Asian, different girls. One girl here, well, they gave me this wonderful doll, you know, one of their native dressed dolls, which was a nice gift as a going away present. Here's another picture of this going away party we had. I was getting ready to go to the airport, and this girl right here, who had been a little troublemaker in class, and she would laugh and get kids' attention and such. And at recess time, when she brought her guitar to school, and at recess time she'd go outside and start singing, and the kids would gather around her, so she was an entertainer. Well, she gave me a little bit of trouble, but Years later, when we got home, I'd say, oh, a lot of years later, and we were working in Illinois at that time, and she wrote me a letter. She found out how to get a hold of me, wrote me a letter and apologized to me and said, I'm the one that gave you so much trouble. Do you remember me? She apologized, and she said, I have given my heart to Jesus. And you know, the guitar she played and the singing she did, she ended up being a well-known singer in Japan. She said, I'm going back and I'm serving Jesus in my country. I'm traveling all around singing for Jesus. Wrote some of her own songs. You never know these kids that you're influencing. So when we were released from the military and came home, we went back to finish our Bible schooling. And we got into a singing group again. And the college, here's the singing group we got into this time. It was a quartet. And I sang the high tenor and sometimes lead, depending upon the song. And my husband sang bass or baritone. And this guy sang lead or tenor. He and I were interchangeable. This girl sang baritone when Dale was singing bass. And she had a beautiful, strong contralto voice. So God put us together. Actually, the music director from the college said, I think you four would work together well. Well, God had it in his heart that we would travel for the college, and we did again. We traveled as a quartet for several years, made several albums, ministered in a lot of churches. And then the day came, we went our own way. Those kids got married, moved away, and Dale and I were left. And here we are. So we started singing just duet. That was a real change. We were used to all this other, these other voices. But we got acquainted with Nashville, Tennessee, and they're all the best musicians, you know. And we hired backup singers for backup sound, but we did all the solo or duet work. And God allowed us to make, over all of our music time, it was 16 albums he let us make. And so Dale and I then began to travel as a duet, which we did until we retired with gray hair. So way back in college, when I asked God to let me someday sing what was in my heart, he gave me 50 years of it. While we were out doing this traveling, we were still quite young, as you can see. There was a superintendent from Illinois who met us, and he asked if we would come and work for him in his district. He was a superintendent, and he worked there at the district office. He hired me as, you know, one of the little secretaries, and he asked Dale if he would come and help another fellow bring on the first Christian radio station full-time in that state, which my husband did. Well, here's a picture of my husband here. And this man is a superintendent, and this is a picture taken at my husband's ordination. They recognized God's call in his life, and they gave him papers, as it were, with the organization to preach. And my husband did some of that. Before we left Illinois, we attended on weekends the local church when we weren't out singing, and that was in the town of Carlinville, Illinois, southern Illinois. And there, this is a picture of the church, and there we met the pastors. Here's my husband, and here I am. Here's the pastor and his wife. These people were just there as a 50-year acquaintance with the church. But my husband and I and Pastor and Mrs. Hodge became lifelong friends till the day he died. She's still alive, about just over 100. From that church, There was a man that we met while we were in Illinois, who invited us to come to England to work with him in his church. Here's the man. He was a big man. David Powell was his name. He was the founder of this First Pentecostal church there in Rotherham, England. That's kind of in the blue-collar steel workers community. And there's my husband with the beard. So we went over there to work with him. Here's a picture of the church, if you can see it. It was the largest Pentecostal church in England. Only 500, but that was good for England. And there was a powerful, wonderful congregation there that we became acquainted with, and to this day are great friends with some of them yet. My husband was just this morning speaking to 2 younger men as children of some of those parents. He was on the phone speaking to them in the Word of God. Here is the choir that Dale led at that Rotherham, England church. And also while we were there, the church built this brand new 6-bedroom, 5-bathroom, 2-story house across the street from the church. And they wanted us to live there and to take in guests, to have youth groups there, to have ladies' meetings or whatever. So we were full-time there, enjoying a lot of good ministry. Every Sunday, I'd go and buy 2 big, the fattest chickens I could find. That's all we could afford. And potatoes and peas and, just some basics and great gravy. I'd put those chickens in the oven and roast them. So we come home from church, it's all ready, the table's set. Church gave us all the equipment. We had big long tables and all the chairs all set up. We could feed 24 on a Sunday. So we'd have 24 of the people from church over at a time until we went through the whole church. So that was on a Sunday morning. And then Sunday night, we'd have another 24 for leftovers and desserts. So that gave us the ability to know the people personally. If you don't do something like that, it's just a group of people. But we really had precious times there. Here's a picture of me. I'm here, and here's some of the young girls that would come on I can't remember what day of the week it was, but it was a tea time. The British are good on tea times. That's just cookies and a lot of tea. So we did that. We'd have Christian fellowship and encourage each other. There were a lot of girls that would come, and some of them, their parents didn't come to church, so it was a lot of good fellowship. Here's a picture of that pastor, again, David Powell, in one of his little bungalow houses over in Wath, and he's got my husband sitting with him. There's Dale, and you see his hand pointing his finger. He was good at that, and he was instructing my husband, and he was hoping that Dale would eventually take the church and pastor it because he was looking at retirement. Well, Dale didn't know that that's what was in his mind. But when it came time, he said, "Oh no, I'm not a pastor." So we didn't take that job, which really was kind of hard for this dear man to understand. But you just have to do what God tells you and leave it. No matter how good a person is, no matter how godly they are, only you can know what God tells you what to do. But instead, we came home and continued traveling and singing as a duet. And we traveled throughout the United States a lot. We did some Alaska. But God enabled us to make 16 long play albums during our time of singing and ministering. God provided for us. We never asked for a penny from anybody. People just donated, and we sold our albums. And people used to ask questions kind of behind our back. Where do they get their money? Who's sponsoring them, you know? But I tell you what, God has taken care of us. We don't have more than we need, but we have no needs. Isn't God good? He can be trusted. I remember at one point I said to Dale in our travels, I said, well, honey, now look, we're getting older, about 50 years old. I said, when are we going to settle down and make a life for ourselves? He said, Rita, I can't choose what I'm going to do. I said, well, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? He said, well, I don't know. I said, you don't know? That scared me. And I said, well, man, Dale, he had just bought, and we had enough money to pay half down on a new home, and we were at a place in, where was it? Arizona. And I said, well, I like this home. I got a good view. I think I'll just stay here. You go ahead. And I started to walk back to my bedroom. I was a little bit upset. And God said to me, are you sure you want to be left out? Left out of what? Well, I found out. So I turned around, came back out, and I said, okay, whatever. So I stayed with this traveling, one offering to the next. And here we are. I'm 82. God has taken care of us, been faithful. And our most recent picture was just 4 years ago. My sister, who lives at a nice home out in Selah, invited a bunch of people and put on a big spread of food. And then she wanted us to sing, and she joined us. She's a good singer. So this was our last singing engagement here. But God has been good and faithful. And I just thank you. I thank CBY for letting me come and give my testimony. I thank God that He called me, that He loved me, that He had a purpose for my life. And I just told a young, what would he be, nephew by marriage, I got a hold of him for a good 20 minutes, and I said, look, do you know God's plan for you? You're 19, you should know a little something by now. Have you asked Him? Friends, be faithful, give the word, influence those that God has put around you. You won't be here forever. I'm not going to be here forever. And I thank God that He let me open my mouth and witness to Jesus and His great love for me. So I hope you would do that. And I thank CBY again for giving me these opportunities. And I'm telling my friends now, if I don't see you again down here, I'll see you up there. And it doesn't happen by accident, friends. Make heaven your home. You have to determine it. And the scripture that comes to my mind, it says, I think I mentioned it, Revelation 12:11. And the believers, they overcame him, the Antichrist, Satan, this world system. You and I overcome that spirit by the blood of the Lamb, the word of your testimony. So get busy and not loving your life to the death. Amen. God bless you. Thank you.
This is CBY, Christian Broadcasting of Yakima, your local Christian television station, bringing to our valley quality Christian programming for more than 40 years.